I wanted to thank Dana and Simeon for having me back. I feel like a rock star because of the way they treat me. I'm just this guy from Big Bear for 40 years that managed to work for 40 years in real estate and still be alive and kicking, and life is good. So I appreciate you all being here today. Also want to thank Paul for lunch today. He's the newest partner with RE/MAX Big Bear and Area Experts. And one of the things I liked about, chatting with him yesterday, he's been in the business for a long time and has seen the ups and downs of this crazy business that we're in, this crazy market. And so there are a lot of solutions to transactions, and it really pays to have somebody that has the experience, that has gone through all of those different scenarios that you're going to be going through. And so reach out to him as a good resource going forward for your transactions, because he'll probably save you a few deals here and there. So thank you very much, Paul. Give him a hand again. Thank you. So today, I promised before we started today on the sales meeting last week, I promised that I was going to share with you exactly what to say and exactly what to do to make more money in this market and every market going forward. So I want you to remember that that is the promise that I'm making to you today. So let's start with the most difficult part. In 1978, M. Scott Peck wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled, and the first 3 words of that book were, "Life is difficult." Anybody read that book besides me? Life is difficult. Does anybody agree with that? Yes, life is difficult. And real estate is no different than life. It can be difficult. But really, what really caught me about that book, that really got to me, was he said, once you accept the fact that life is difficult, once you accept the fact, it ceases to be a problem for you because you're no longer fighting about it. You're no longer arguing about it. You've simply accepted the fact that life is difficult, and you start working for solutions. And so that is the theme of what we're going to be talking about today in this presentation. The real estate life is difficult, but we're not going to talk about how difficult it is. We're going to talk about the solutions going forward. Okay? Now, we all know agents that have reached the pinnacle of success. Sometimes they have the shows, the real estate, the millionaire Miami agents, and you see all of these people wearing stiletto heels and driving around in Lamborghinis, and they're doing all of this crazy stuff. Is that what our life is like?
Yeah.
There's a big difference between what the public thinks and what the reality of our business is like. But yet it is a really good life. Yesterday when we were having the tacos with the teacher presentation going on, we were talking about how there's successful agents that showed up yesterday to that little meal that we had, and they were talking about their lives. The families that they were raising, the trips that they were doing, the rich, full lives that we all have as real estate agents. We have a business that can fund, if we're doing our business well, we can fund a life that sends our kids to college, that sends us on great vacations, that allows us to have the time to enjoy our families if we want to. This is a great business. It's unlike anything else that I've ever experienced. And we know that people are successful, but not everyone is, right? Not everyone is. So we're going to talk about, there's 3 different types of markets that are out there. Does this look like what your open houses look like right now, or are they better than that? Is it a little better than that? Okay. So there are really 3 different types of markets. There is a normal market, which is sort of like what we're in right now. And then there's runaway crazy seller markets. COVID was that. 1997 through 2005 was like that. 1988, 1989 was like that. I don't know how many of you were around for that. I think just maybe myself and Dana were around for that. So I've been through these 3, great markets where you make a lot of money and then it goes to heck. And then we have these normal markets. It reveals the skills that you have, and it reveals the skills that you don't have. In a runaway market, the buyers and the sellers, everybody wants to do a deal. There's so much motivation and there's such a rush to do business that you don't have to ask hard questions. You don't have to listen. All you have to do is hang on by the seat of your pants. Now, I know there's problems with runaway markets too, like negotiating 30 offers on one property, and having sellers want to cut your commission because it's only going to take you 15 minutes to sell the house, right? So we do have challenges in those runaway markets, but making money is not one of them. Everybody makes money in a runaway market. It's what happens when the market is normal is that those people go away and our skills become much more important. So recently there was a survey that was sent out by the company, and I heard the answer that I'm going to ask you guys. What do you guys need right now in order to make more money? Anything else?
Realistic sellers.
Realistic sellers. The answer that I was looking for was more leads. We need more leads. We need more leads. And so I want to talk about that because we do have to have leads in order to make money in real estate. If we don't have anybody, we don't have any opportunities. We have to have opportunities. But I don't think the biggest problem that we have is not having enough leads. It's having more conversations that convert them. It's conversations that convert the people that we're already talking to. So I'm going to introduce to you what I call the trust to truth method. I was going to write this book about 20 years ago, and I decided not to do it. The death of a professional. Real salespeople do things on purpose. And one of the things that they do is they have to get the truth out of their clients in order to be able to help them. So many of you have heard the script that I used to use when I started back in 1986. That was back in the day when people were at home for dinner, and I would dial the phone, and my script was very simple. Ring, ring, ring. Hi, this is Mark. Is this Mr. Smith? Yes, it is. Have you sold your cabin in Big Bear yet? No. Have you been thinking about it? No. Thanks for your time, and I'd hang up. Now, I was one of those people that everybody hates. I called it dinner time. The good news is that the phone call usually lasted about 20 seconds and it was over. But there's some important things about that particular activity that I was doing that is important for you to know. One was that I got the truth from the client. I asked them a question that took them off guard, and they blurted out the truth. And the truth was whether they were thinking about selling or whether they weren't. And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the truth. And when I got the truth, I could decide whether I was going to move forward with them or whether I wasn't. Okay? There's another thing that's important about that script is that I didn't try to talk anybody into selling that said they weren't thinking about selling. I wasn't trying to make something out of them that they were not. The other thing was that I was not really upset when they said no. I think I've shared with you is that I put 50 pennies on my desk, and I'd make a phone call, and every time I talked to somebody, I would move the penny over. I made 50 calls in an hour. Those were the golden days of prospecting, I can tell you. Okay? I'm not saying that you should do that now because you can't. With the do not call list, a lot of the stuff like that would be illegal. People don't answer their phone. If you dial for an hour, you're probably going to talk with 3 people, right? Not 50, you're going to talk with 3. So tactics change, but the principles have not changed. The principle of talking with people and getting them to tell you the truth is the principle that I want to talk about as we start. Now, people hate the word prospecting so much they've changed it to lead generation, right? We buy leads, we mail for leads, we'll do anything to generate leads, but the underlying word of prospecting is really what we're doing. And prospecting is sorting. Prospecting is sorting. I want you to think about that. Now, prospectors, they have a gold pan, and they dip it into the river, and they pull out some sand and some silt and hopefully some gold flakes and maybe a nugget or two. And they dip it in the river and they start panning. They start circling, and what they're doing with that is they're sifting. And the river water and the water is taking the stuff that is of no value out of the pan and taking it out, and it's moving things around, and because gold is heavier, it drops to the bottom, and that's where they find it. So I want you to think of your prospecting or as your conversations more about sifting than thinking about lead generation. You notice that the prospector, when he's doing this with the gold pan, he's not cursing the silt, right? He's not making silt turn into gold. What he's doing is he's sifting, looking for the gold. He's going through the sand, the silt, the mud, and everything else, trying to help the gold identify itself so he knows what to work on and what not to work on. And so it is my belief, and what I'm sharing with you today is by having better conversations with the people that you're already talking to, if you take the idea that you're sifting, that you don't need to go to Zillow for another lead, you don't need to go to Realtor.com for a lead, you don't have to do anything for a lead. Everybody that is around you is a potential lead. Now, some of you looking at me would say, well, Mark's not a lead. That's not true. I still own property here. But Mark isn't going to list with me. How do you know that? How do you know that? You guys have given up on the idea that talking to me about real estate and sifting in the conversation with me is a waste of your time. That's a mistake. And you guys are making it with me, but you're also making it with a whole lot of other people that you're talking with. Okay? And at the end of today, you're going to know exactly what you need to present to people in order to be the kind of person that they're going to be seeking you out when they're ready to do a transaction. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to talk about this one.
Looks like feng shui.
It looks like feng shui. Well, what it is it's the answer to, we think that we need more leads when what we need is better conversation skills and better conversion skills. This is so important for you guys to get this, is that if you have more leads and you're not converting them, you're losing them. Tim Wood used to say it's the leads that are going out the back door that are causing this company all the money. We have plenty of leads. It's the ones going out the back door. How many leads are going out the back door in your business right now because of the conversations that you're having? Now, I know that's a hard question, but how many of you, when you're talking with somebody for the first time, can you tell they're trying to get off the phone with you? Or they're running away from you. You're standing at the window at the village office and talking to them about real estate, and they're backing up, doing this kind of... Does that happen to you guys? Okay. What do you do about it? That's what we're going to talk about today. What do you do about it? What I'm sharing with you is that if you have more leads and you don't fix your conversation problems, you're going to have more people running away from you. If you have more leads and you don't fix your questions that you're asking them, that you're never going to find out the truth about what they're trying to do to help them move forward. If you don't have better conversations and they test you and you get angry at them and offended because they've questioned your commission or they've questioned your competence and you get mad at them, you're going to drive more people away. So what I think is happening more than you guys would be willing to share is that most people in this room don't want more leads. They want another runaway market, and we can't change that. All we can do is the way that we approach the leads that we have. Now, nobody's smiling in this room right now. There's nobody smiling in right now. But the truth is that it doesn't matter what market that you're in, is that if you improve the way that you communicate to people, you're going to get better results. Okay? Imagine this, if you have a 1% conversion rate and you get 10,000 leads, that means you'll get 100 opportunities for a transaction. That doesn't sound very good to me. How long does it take to qualify 10,000 leads that are mad at you? How much does it cost to get 10,000 leads that are mad at you? Wouldn't it be better off to have 250 leads or 500 leads and get a 25, 30, or 40% conversion rate? You see, I believe that if you are not having effective conversations with your clients right now, people that you have driven away by the way you're interacting with them, just because they weren't ready yet, means that they're not going to come back to you in the future. Talked about prospecting is sifting. So let's talk about how we get to this trusted truth method. Prospecting is sifting. When people are frightened and they've all had a bad experience with a real estate salesperson, they don't want to talk with us. They don't know you. They don't know what you stand for. They don't know what the company stands for. They don't know if you're going to try and trick them into anything. What they want is information with no commitment from anybody. And so you're going to get resistance from them. It's automatic. It's part of human nature. How many of you have heard some version of this, stranger danger? We heard that as kids. We taught our kids that information. Be aware of strangers. Now, I know that the human being wants to connect with other human beings. That's our greatest need, is to be connected. We are humans that want to be in communion with other people. So they want to, but they have been taught to be distrustful. And so when you meet somebody for the first time or before you've built rapport with them, to experience resistance from them is absolutely normal, and we need to find ways to deal with that. So there's three things that they're looking for. Oh, is this how they see you? I like that. I like that. So truth follows trust. There's three things that the public needs to know from you in order to trust you enough to tell you the truth. They need to know that they're physically safe from you. You know, particularly the women. Have you ever been around somebody that you felt uncomfortable with? They need to feel safe that if they share information with you, that you're not going to use it against them. They need to feel emotionally safe. That takes time. The second thing that they need to know is that you're competent. A lot of people have a business plan of being a really, really nice person, but you wouldn't trust them with your $1 million transaction because you don't think they're all that competent. Dan and I were talking about this a few weeks ago as we were talking about this class. It's a tactic, it's a trick, but it was done on purpose. Was when I would get a new lead from Realtor.com and they would say, I'd like more information about this property. I used to, oh, there's another crappy lead. What kind of information would you like? You know, I mean, there's pictures, you know, what are you looking for? I'd like more information about this house. Well, come on. So while I had that attitude, I didn't convert anybody from Realtor.com with that kind of an attitude. But what I did is I changed my attitude and I changed my approach. And what I started doing when somebody would send me an email that said, I need a little bit more information about that property, I would respond and I would say the truth, because I know all of you are previewing property. I've been in that home. It's a great house. And I would tell them something about the house that they wouldn't know from looking at it online. That's the one that just had the roof replaced on the back half of the house. Or that's the one that's got the crack in the foundation. Or that's the one that had the neighbor's house that burned down, a year ago. I would tell them something about the house that they couldn't possibly find out by looking at it online. And I did that on purpose because I wanted them to know that I had information that was valuable to them. And then I would say, what other information can I share with you? I got a lot of better response from that. Tell them something that they couldn't possibly know about the house that you think would be of interest to them, so that you are demonstrating that you are competent, that you know something. The last thing that they're looking for is they're looking for the fact that you are competent, but you're not going to use it against them. You're going to be their advocate. You're going to be their advocate. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is reducing the threat. A lot of times reducing the threat comes across in signs. They're not necessarily what you say, they're how you say it and how you look when you're saying it. So I love sharing this message. 20 years ago, I'm in Mike Ferry's office down in Orange County doing his coaches training. He brought all of his potential coaches into Mike Ferry's office to train them. And the second day, Mike looked at me, he was sitting across the table from him, and there's 6 other coaches there. And he says, Mark, you've got a great smile. And I said, thanks, Mike. And he says, no, I mean it. When you smile, you light up the room. And I said, thanks, Mike. Where are you going with this? He says, but we don't see it very often. And I says, well, what do you mean? And he says, you've got this look on your face. This part of my face would get really tight. And I'd be doing this. And he would say, Mark, our coaches need to be approachable. And the look on your face is not approachable. Isn't that a good bit of information to know? I was sending a sign to people, which the honest truth is I was so interested in what they had to say is that I had my concentration on them and I was doing this because I was paying attention. The best of intentions, but that's not what they were hearing. I was not safe. I talked about this, I want to say a year ago when I was here, I talked about learning how to smile because I don't smile naturally. I'm very serious. And so I talked about something that's called a flooding smile, that when you're looking at somebody, your smile gets bigger. And Maureen, who's not here today, she said, that looked really creepy. It's because I hadn't practiced it yet. Okay? I think the very first podcast that I did, Nicole reviewed it, and she said, Mark, do you ever blink? I hadn't because I was so scared. I was like this. So I want you to do this when you go home today, when you're watching the news and you see somebody being interviewed, and watch the hosts that are on the TV channel, whether it doesn't matter what it is, but you will see people that are on the TV and they will be doing this. Mm-hmm. They'll be nodding their head like this, and you'll see some people every once in a while that they're reacting. And then you'll also see some guests that are on these TV shows that are standing there like this, just like I was. Okay. So there are signals that we are sending to people that indicate whether we are safe or not. And a lot of times they are physical and visual signs that they can see. If we get in their space too close, okay. If they say, I think about selling, and all of a sudden we start closing, or a tactic to write down. Ask, probe again, and summarize. It takes time to build rapport. And the moment that somebody says that they're interested, if you start asking solutions, you're trying to solve a problem that you don't know yet. You don't know it in depth. So when somebody says, I'm afraid of that payment, oh, okay, so, tell me, is it the payment itself, the monthly payment that you have, or is it the interest rate? What is it that's concerning you about it? Are you afraid that you might be losing your job? Ask, probe again, and find out all of the information. Let them talk about it so that you get a broader definition of what their challenge is, and then summarize it. It takes an extra 4 or 5 minutes to do that. But the sign that you're sending them is that you care enough to ask them about what's going on with them before you try and rope them into a transaction. Make sense? Okay. So signs. Signs are the very first thing that you want to reduce the threat. It can be the way that you look. It can also be some of the things that you say and the way that you approach them. The second thing that you want to do is you want to earn their trust through demonstrating competence. So we talked about, I call it a trick. It's not really a trick, it's a tactic. There are things that we can do to demonstrate to people that we know what we're talking about. One of them is telling them something about the inventory that they're not aware of. The other one is when they ask us a technical question, answer the question. Okay? Answer the question. Okay? And if you don't know the answer to the question, Gina knows the script. I don't know, but I'll find out. I'm not sure, but I'll find out. Okay? So you want to demonstrate competence. The last one is to be their advocate. And I think a lot of people lose their clients in this one. They start off being nice. They start off by asking questions. They're trying to bond with the client. And everything's going really well, and the client starts to trust them. And then the client says, but what about your commission? What does the agent do when they ask you about your commission? Agent gets defensive. Great book. I'll have to credit Rachel for this. There's a book out there called The Bait of Satan, and it's all about being offended. The biggest problem in real estate right now is that we're offended because our clients are concerned about things that we're not interested in other than the closing. We're offended when they have fears, when what they need is for us to be their advocate. That's what they need from us. Okay. So I'm going to share a real life story, and I think I've shared this before. I'll share this real life story. Gosh, I'm not even sure what year it was, but it was a long time ago. Lady, called and wanted to look at property up here, and I worked for Tim at the time, and her name was Marge Peterson, and I set an appointment with her on a Saturday, and I had a routine that I worked with all my buyers. And the routine is that I would prepare a list of properties to show that fit the criteria that she'd asked about. But this was before the internet, and so what we had was color flyers. And so I would have a list of 5, 10, 15, 20 color flyers. And I had this routine, and I did it with Marge that morning. And I went up to her when she came in for the appointment. I said, hey, Marge, it's great to see you. I've got a list of properties to show you. Here are a few of them. Do you mind taking a look at them and telling me if any of them sort of catch your eye? Now, I didn't do that to sell her house. I did that because I wanted to create that relationship of trust with her. And I was looking for her to tell me, this one sort of looks attractive from the outside, or this one, or tell me about that one. But that's not what Marge said. Marge sort of flipped through them, body language. Well, Mark, you're going to have to do a hell of a lot better than that. Resistance. I was getting resistance. Carrie Kersavage was sitting at the receptionist desk and heard it, and I think Jan O'Hara was sitting at her. There were a bunch of people there, and everybody's eyes went big. And I said, that's okay, Marge. I said, based on what you shared with me, this is where I think we should start, but I know the inventory really well. And if these don't work for you, we're going to switch quickly and get you to exactly where you want to go. She said, okay. So let me break that down for you. I was trying to build a relationship with her before I was trying to sell her something. And I was testing her, looking for her reaction. She was testing me, and I didn't take the bait. Sometimes an agent, when they are treated that way, the first thing that happens is their ego. Marge, I spent 3 hours preparing. You need to pay attention to what I'm teaching you. What a witch, I know how real estate people think. I am one. But we don't act that way. And what's even better is if we don't think that way. If we change our thinking and we change our behavior, things will change. So what I shared with her is I did not give up my dignity as a broker. I didn't shrink. And I didn't attack her either. I didn't attack her. I said, okay. I said, I'm here for you. I'm your advocate. We'll change. I'm your advocate. I know the inventory well. I'm competent. And when you share with me things I don't want to hear, I'm not going to beat you up and attack you for it. People are the point in real estate. It's not the bedrooms, it's not the baths, it's the people that make a difference. And how we treat them is going to make all of the difference in the world. So you might be asking, well, how do you do that? Mike Ferry's talked for years. He said, real estate agents don't know what to say and they don't know what to do. Now, everybody in here is selling real estate. Do you guys think you could do better? That's a question. Could you do better? Always. So there's an 8-week course that I've developed. It's called Control Before Confidence, and there's a lot of information that are in those pamphlets that are talking about it. And this is going to be a little bit of an introduction into what that is about. And I learned it from public speaking because there are a lot of similarities between public speaking and talking with somebody that you don't know that's openly hostile to you. So what happens when you get up in front of a group of people I think the Seinfeld episode said it best. There's only one person at a funeral that would rather be in the casket than out of the casket. And that's the guy doing the eulogy. When you stand up in front of a group of people, there's something called cognitive overload. It means there's a lot of things going through our mind. When you stand up in front of a group of people to talk, our minds sort of shut down, man. We start hearing noises. We're looking at, he's got his arms crossed. Is he cold or is he mad at me? What's that sound? Is that a chainsaw out there or is that a helicopter? What was I supposed to say next? Oh my God, is my fly open? There's all of these things that are going on in your head when you're standing in front of a group of people. And because all of this stuff is going through your mind, you can't think straight. And when you can't think straight, you don't perform well, right? So what happens when we get nervous when we get up in front of a group of people to talk? We start talking really fast. We start going, we're talking out loud while we're thinking. We're trying to catch up. The same thing happens when you are in a sales presentation that is under stress and discomfort. So there are things that we know from all of the research that's been out there is that we never rise to the occasion when we're under stress. We always go back to the level of our training. How many of you are training your presentations versus winging it? I don't see any hands. Don't see any hands. So let's talk about some of the things that we are going to be working on in this 8-week course for those people that do want to join in on it. Some of the things that we want to do, whether we're public speaking or whether we're doing a presentation, are mechanical. The first thing that we know is that in order to communicate well, we need to be understood. We need to be clear. We need clarity. So there's 3 things that I'm going to share with you that will help with clarity. One is to slow down and speak at 80% of your normal pace. Mickey's doesn't like that. Why? If you are trying to influence and teach somebody some information that's important, they have to understand it. And if speaking slower is going to help them do that, slow down. Another thing that we should do is we should be belly breathing. What happens when we get nervous? We start breathing from up here, hyperventilating a little bit. Our voice box gets sort of squeezed. Our voice changes. We start feeling a little bit uncomfortable. When we feel uncomfortable, what do our customers feel? They feel uncomfortable. Our nervous system is out of whack, and we're communicating, remember the signs and signals, and we are communicating that to our client. And so now we're nervous, they're nervous, we're talking fast, and we're sending all of that information to them. That's not what we want to send. The last thing that we want to do is we want to finish our words, like start, podcast. Why? Because when we start getting nervous, we tend to not finish the words that we're saying, which sends the message to people that we're unsure, they're unsure, and that's not the kind of communication that we want. So there are some exercises, and I'm not going to do it with anybody in here, but I have a pencil drill where you, during this 8-week class, you spend a little bit of time finishing your words with a pencil in your mouth. It helps you to finish the words that you're speaking. Lots of exercises. Breathing is an exercise. Doing the pencil drill is one that we'll do. So some of those are mechanical. See, even when I get nervous, I start talking too fast, huh? Some of the other signs that are out there. How many of you don't make eye contact with your clients when you're doing a presentation because you're nervous? I've done it. Nobody else will admit to it. Everybody else in here doesn't need to work on that. Okay? It's important when you are having a conversation with a person that you look at them when you're making a point and you finish that point with them. Because when I'm finishing the point with you, I've made that connection. Now, everybody else in the room sees me make that connection. It's with you. It's not with them. But I'm still making a connection. And when I finish the point and I go to somebody else, now everybody in the room is involved in making that connection. You can practice that in your presentations with your clients. So you're looking them in the eye as you make those points. before you move on to the wife or the husband or whoever that other person is. You're making a connection with your eye contact while you're making a presentation. How can you do with that if you're thinking about what am I supposed to say next? We need to be able to practice so that we can present ourselves in a way that they trust us. And all of these things that I'm teaching will help you to get credibility with the people that you're communicating with better. Eye contact, tone. Who's been trained by Mike Ferry? Anybody in here besides me, Mike Ferry? He talks about upswings and downswings. When do you plan on moving? Sounds very, very insecure. Sounds very, very nervous. When do you plan on moving? When you finish your statements with a downswing or with a lowering of the voice, it makes you have a little bit more authority rather than being unsure of yourself. So in the 8-week class, we practice saying things that are going to end with that kind of authority. There's other things that he calls embedded commands where you put emphasis on different words. We've talked about this before. When do you plan on moving? When I see you, how much do you want to list your home for? That phrase, list your home for, is an embedded command. So there are tactics, there are exercises, and there are things that we can do to master what it is that we're doing in front of people to get better results. Now, I know practice is not something that a lot of people like to do. All elite athletes practice, professional musicians practice, public speakers practice. Why do real estate agents not practice? Are we that good? Why do we not do it? I learned this up at Snow Summit. Some of you are skiers. When I first started teaching, it was 32 years ago. It was the year I met Carrie. I learned about kinesthetic memory. When you're on your skis and you feel that movement in your foot when your ski is sliding on the snow, and you can just sort of move your ankle a little bit and it will grip if you go in and it will slide if you go out, and you get that feel. It's kinesthetic memory. It means that you can feel it. So when you are learning to ski badly in the beginning, you're thinking about every single thing that you do. But once you learn muscle memory, it's like skiing, it's like driving a stick shift, it becomes automatic. And when your sales skills and your communication skills become automatic, you have time to listen to what the customer is saying. You get to see what their body language is. You get to see them look at their watch. And when they look at their watch, they know, or you know, that they don't want to hear what you're saying, or they're in a hurry. You know you're boring them if they're looking at their watch. Okay? So some of this stuff is signals. Some of the things that we're going to talk about are about language. And I was just recently introduced to this. We use a lot of really weak language. So here's some examples of what I say. Does that make sense? That's weak language. Do you have a moment? I don't want to bother you. Anybody ever say it? We think we're being courteous, but we're not. We are sending a message to them that we're unsure of ourselves. We can be both humble and professional, but be assertive. Here's the point that I need to get across to you today. Or here's one of the points that we need to really consider before we make another decision. I'm going to repeat this because I want to make sure I bring this message home. Not, does that make sense? Let me bring this message home again. It's important. So there are typical things that we can do that will change the way that we communicate with other people. So the last one that I'm going to finish off on are putting structure into the way that we talk. I gave you one example already. Ask, probe again, and summarize. When you are asking questions of your clients and you're trying to do the diagnostic part of that relationship, don't take the service answer, go further. But there's other ones. How many of you have ever had somebody ask you a question and you talked around in circles for 5 minutes trying to find the point? I do that on some of the calls that I'm on with you guys. Somebody will call me with a question, or I'm on Zoom and they'll ask me a question. And so they're asking me a question. I haven't thought about it. They ask me a question. I haven't thought about it. So I start talking out loud. And we talk about it for 5 minutes, and at the end of 5 minutes, we get to it. Do you think that helps your clients? They might be saying, I love Gina, but what was the point? What was the point? No, I know I'm picking on you, but I do it. Okay? So there are things that we can do to structure the way that we communicate in order to stop doing that. And one is called PERP. Make your point. Actually, I gave it to you backwards. P and then R for a reason, give an example, and then make your point again. Reason. So if I am talking with a client and the client asks me a question, I wasn't necessarily prepared for it. What's the first thing that I do? Ask them a question, probe again, and then summarize. That probably gives me 3 or 4 minutes to send them the message that I care about them enough to know the whole truth about their question and their concern. It buys me time to learn more about them. It also buys me time to prepare my response to them. So when somebody said, will you do it for 4%? Will you sell your house for 4%? Okay, so you're asking if I'll cut my commission. My commission rate is normally higher than that. What do you think the going rate is? There's a question. I don't know what their answer is. Are you asking that because you've interviewed other people that are offering services at 4%? Or is it just a question because you're concerned about your net? Probe. At the end of it, so what I'm hearing you say is that you're not convinced that paying a full 6% commission in today's market is the going rate. But with the services that we're talking about doing here, you don't have any other agent that's willing to do all of the things that I would do for that cost, correct? Hopefully they agree with that. So in order to net you the most money, we need to stay at a full commission so that you get the full marketing and allow us to negotiate the highest possible sale that you can get with the greatest amount of exposure, because what you really want is the highest net proceeds, right? So we need to go ahead and market it fully at the full fee. So we make a point, we give them a reason, we give them an example, and then we make the point again. There's other formulas that we can use. We can use past, present, and future. In the past, I put 50 pennies on the desk to prospect and called people and had 20-minute phone calls or 20-second phone calls. Then when people stopped answering the phone in order to talk with more people in an hour, I had to use an automatic dialer to reach more people. Now nobody answers the phone. So now what I do is I communicate better with the people that I do talk with so I don't lose many. I've upgraded my skills so I get better results. Past, present, future. Another one that's an example would be problem, cause, solution. What's a normal problem that you have in real estate? Well, we have a problem. The problem is, the cause of it is that the seller or the buyer is not prepared to move forward unless we give them a greater credit to solve their issue, right? Okay. So, do we have any other options besides this particular buyer that we have? If we lose this buyer and start over at 0, would that solve your problem or would that make your problem worse?
It wouldn't solve it.
So you could close escrow and be less the credit that they're asking for and get your equity out of the house. Or if we lose this buyer, we don't have any equity, so you have a bigger problem, don't you? So what's the best solution that we can have going forward? Give them the credit? Or try and negotiate a better credit? Problem, cause, solution. I mean, it takes a little bit of practice to go through those. So what I'm proposing does any of this sound interesting to you guys? Because I think it's important. I think it's important to recognize that every single person that you talk to is a potential lead. They're potential business for you, even if they're not ready to do it now, even if they're not ready to do it next week. even if they're already in the real estate business. I know a lot of people that were in the real estate business for 20, 30 years, that when they sold their last property in Big Bear, they didn't do it themselves. I know a lot of people like that. I know a lot of people that have been using a real estate agent for the last 5 years, and that agent retires and goes somewhere else, and so they need to find a new realtor. So why wouldn't you be talking with every single person that's around you and find the right category to put them in? One of the interesting things, and this has sort of come up recently for me, is that there's this talk about, people are utilitarian. You're told we don't use people, we use things, but we don't use people. And that really sort of has gotten into my head. We don't use people, we use things. And most people think when a salesperson is talking to them, they're trying to use them in order to get a commission. So what if we change that? What if we changed every conversation that we had with people to identify what box they're in? They have somebody and they don't need my help now. They don't have somebody, but they don't need my help right now. They would like my help, but they can't afford to do it right now. And if I give them some education and some time and patience, they will be ready to go forward. And what if I made them feel good about where they were and didn't just discard them because they were not important to me right now? And I think that's really the heart of the Trusted Truth method, is that when you create that relationship with people that even when they're not ready to do business with you today, and you're still there to help them and to love on them and make them feel important, you are the one person that has done that, and all of the other salespeople are ticked off because they didn't get a deal. Who do they go to when they're ready? Who do they go to when they have a question, right? So for those of you that are interested, I'm going to do an 8-week program on this Trusted Truth method, which is going to be to take the information from one of the categories, to have a 1-hour Zoom meeting on that, and then have exercises that you can use the rest of the week to build muscle memory on that particular skill. I've done them myself. I told you about the pencil drill. There's a lot of breathing. There's a lot of recording yourself doing presentations. The one thing that I really like, and those of you that have been with me on the ChatGPT exercise, is you can role play with ChatGPT. And so I have a prompt to put in ChatGPT that will help you role play these conversations, and it will tell you whether you use the prep response, whether you use the past, present, future response, whether you use the problem, cause, solution response. It'll also tell you whether you built trust in the conversation or whether you took trust away. So that's what I'm offering for those of you that are interested. Are there any questions? For you? Well, so here's, yeah, there's no cost to it. I mean, I work for you guys. When? It's going to depend on, it's going to be in 2 weeks it'll start, but it's going to depend on when I can get the most people involved with it. Actually, that's not true. It won't cost nothing. What it will cost is a testimonial at the end where you tell me what you learned.
Can you opt out of that?
Can you opt out of the testimonial? No? Any other questions? Questions? It's going to depend on when I can get the most people to attend. Nope. No question? What's the best day of the week for everyone?
I know.
No, this is good. That's on Monday.
It would have to be afternoon. Yeah.
I'm still going to do the Tuesday morning.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm looking. It's going to be a group. Yeah. I mean, it'll be a group for the people that want to show up. But, I think it's really, really important. It's really, really important to practice so that you get the muscle memory of how to breathe, how to slow down, how to let the words get out, how to think under pressure, so that when you're sitting in front of a client that you've already done it before and you're not doing this. So that's it. So I'm hearing Tuesday or Thursday, and it's probably Tuesday. Nobody's going to want a tour on Thursday and then do a class. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming and joining. It's always a pleasure to be with all of you. This is a great turnout. Thank you again, Paul, for feeding everyone, because I know they actually came for the lunch, because we get free lunches, is what we're told. Appreciate that.
Yeah.